Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of the Idle Park Talk Show. We are certainly glad to have you on our channel.
Today we have Moses Mariam, who is seeking the nomination for the Calgary-North riding. He is here to talk about his political ambitions, his political history, and we are so happy to have you here, Moses. Thank you for making the drive all the way from the north to the south, and welcome.
Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate being on here.
Good. So you seem to be a very busy guy. Lots going on right now with political campaign and nominations for the NDP. Maybe we'll just start from the beginning. How did you, what's your story getting into politics?
Yeah, I mean, as a young fellow, I kind of always had an interest in politics, or at least in social issues. Mm-hmm. As I got older, obviously, I went to university. I actually got into biological sciences at first. Yeah. Wanted to be a doctor, help people out. A little bit about myself. When I was younger, I actually had quite the medical episode at birth. So I wanted to kind of give back in the medical field in that way. That's kind of how I always felt. Mm-hmm. I realized really quick that, maybe I don't like physics that much. So I actually was taking a political science class at the time. It was just, an option course. Mm-hmm. And I really, really enjoyed it. Mm-hmm. And I realized, there's a lot of ways that you can help people out. And, policymakers, for better or for worse, with the stroke of a pen, can really impact people's lives. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of how that journey started for me. I went on to finish my degree in political science at U of C, and then another degree in history with a focus on, Canadian social policy. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of a little bit about myself and my background.
So you currently representing, or you're seeking to represent the Calgary-North. I'm not sure I know where that is in Calgary. So can you speak a little bit about your riding and the people who live in these areas?
Yeah, sure. I mean, Calgary-North is, one of the, based on landmass, one of the smallest ridings actually in Alberta.
Is it new too?
It's new in terms of name. It used to be Calgary Northern Hills Association was attached to that. So the Calgary Northern Hills riding, it's kind of transitioned now into Calgary North, and it's composed of Panorama Hills, Carrington, and Evanston. Mm-hmm. Although it's a small riding based on landmass, right. Panorama Hills is the single largest neighborhood in Calgary. So it's kind of an anomaly in that regard. Yeah. And we'll talk about other ways it's an anomaly as well.
And maybe it's just me, because I'm not really knowledgeable about these things. How do they come up with the ridings?
Yeah, so the ridings are kind of divvied up, and the boundaries are looked at every 2 years or so. Okay. And people, obviously members of the legislature, kind of look at the recommendations. Mm-hmm. It's similar as well at the federal level, where the boundaries are changing. Our riding at the federal level is it's completely different based on the proposed one from Elections Canada. We're going to have Skyview, which is in the northeast, be attached to our riding. So it's these things are ever changing, right? Yeah. So.
So why are you seeking the nomination? Why are you seeking to represent the people of Calgary-North? What is it?
Yeah, I'm seeking the nomination for Calgary-North because, I touched on it a little bit by telling you guys, it's a little bit of an anomaly in our riding. Mm-hmm. A lot of the North Central Calgary communities, in my view, are underserved in terms of access to public education and public health care, and the critical infrastructure that's necessary to kind of fill the void of an ever expanding suburban Calgary, right? Mm-hmm. As you guys know, the urban sprawl continues to grow, right? And in our case, City Council actually just approved two new neighborhoods coming in. And like I said, Panorama Hills is already the single largest neighborhood. Mm-hmm. There are some projections that are saying that, the entire area of that north central portion, if you add in Country Hills and Harvest Hills, will have 100,000 people in the riding. Mm-hmm. And the area has no health center or hospital anywhere near site. I think the closest one is actually Airdrie or Foothills. They're both the same. So not close. And then the second thing, there's really no access to public transportation in the area. We've been promised, especially in Panorama Hills and Evanston area, we've been promised the Green Line for a long time. But at the provincial level, there seems to be a lack of kind of advocacy in that regard from our provincial representatives. To give you guys an idea of how bad the deficit really is, we're getting our first public high school in that area being opening its doors 2023. yeah, if you consider that Panorama Hills has been around since 1994, that is horrible, right?
Yeah. So there's the expectation that kids have to drive almost, or well, parents have to find ways to get their kids to school in
Basically.
other communities.
Yeah. So we would have, when I grew up in the riding and I went to Notre Dame Highschool. So I was lucky that I went to the only high school in the area, which was Catholic.
Yeah.
But my dad got me in there. So that was really awesome for me. It made the commute a little bit easier. But a lot of my friends that lived in the area, they were going to Crescent Heights High School, which is nowhere near Calgary-North, or Diefenbaker, which is another one that's nowhere near the riding, right? So we're talking about 20 to 30 minute commutes here. And even now, people who live in Carrington, they can't simply go to the school in Evanston. They're driving 20 to 30 minutes to drop their kids in kindergarten off. That's a long way. And these are the things that kind of motivated me to put my name forward. I think we need that advocacy in our area, and we definitely need to rebuild the area in terms of community building and community engagement too. I think there's a lack of community engagement as well, just because there's apathy. And I think that kind of plays into all of this as well.
Again, this might not be a question for you, but when they extend the city, don't they make provisions for things like that, schools, hospitals? Is it, whose responsibility it is to ensure that this services are available?
I think that's a great question. I think that first off, the responsibility kind of lies within the municipal level, but also within the provincial level and the federal level. You want to have someone that represents you, that is willing to put funding approvals on the table for you, right? But in Calgary's case, the question of urban sprawl has been something that's been quite contentious. It was contentious during the last municipal election too. Our current mayor ran on trying to minimize or stop urban sprawl. I think that part of it also lies at the provincial level too. Your MLA is supposed to represent you and advocate for those things. Community members could be like, we want a school, we want this to happen, this is really important to us. But if you don't have an MLA who's putting that voice down to the CBE, you'd get it, but it might take a little longer. Let's put it that way. It might take a little bit more time for something like that to get done, right? So
you're saying you need someone with a voice on a platform? Is that how it works?
Well, it's not that you need a voice and a platform per se. Like I said, a lot of these things are in the plans. But to get them done in a reasonable amount of time, you need some serious action and advocacy at the provincial government level. It's a lot different when an MLA is saying we're making the case for you than a community leader. Unfortunately, that's just kind of how it works.
So if you were to get the nomination, are you gonna be MLA? You're gonna
So I'm seeking the nomination for the Alberta NDP for Calgary-North. So if I were to win the nomination and then win the election, I would be the MLA for Calgary-North.
Okay, exactly. So just to make sure I guess understand what we're talking about. What does it take to represent a riding? Do you have to have lived there? Can you live anywhere in Calgary? And
you can live anywhere in Calgary. You don't need to necessarily live in the riding to represent it, which is, I have my opinions about that, but that's another conversation for another day. But I think that obviously there's a distinct advantage of living in the riding that you represent, because you can kind of connect at a more local level with some of the issues that exist there, right? That's why I'm speaking so much about the Green Line, the need for a K-6 public school, and the need for a health center, right? These are all things, because I lived there and I've experienced it. It gives you that distinct advantage.
How long have you lived in this riding?
So I've lived in Calgary-North since 2010.
Okay.
So I used to live in Hidden Valley, which used to be part of the riding. It used to be Northern Hills. And I lived in Hidden Valley from 2002 onwards. So grade 2 is when I moved in there with my parents. So it's been a long time in that area.
So what is it about that community that has kept you there this long, and why do you like? Is there anything about the communities that you like?
I think well, obviously when I was young I didn't really have much of a say in grade 2, but my parents kind of really liked it there. It's a quiet area. It's an area that it is, in all honesty, a great place to raise a family. there's a little bit of a lack of amenities. I mean, that's something that kind of persists in a lot of North Central Calgary communities, but it is a close-knit community. I used to play soccer at the Hidden Valley Community Association, and all the parents kind of knew each other, so it was very close knit. And then growing up, moving into Panorama Hills, it was a great opportunity for us because there's a little bit better access to some of the things that we needed, like public transportation, particularly. Although it still wasn't great because you had a bus nearby, but you need to link up to 3 different buses and hope that you get there on time, right? So it's kind of progressed. But as I went through university, there were so many changes that came in, and obviously the high school was right there too, so it made it easier for my parents. For me personally, I love the area. I grew up there, played on all the soccer fields there and everything. So it's just always been home for me. There's no real eloquent way of saying that, but home is home, right? So that's kind of what it is for me.
I know I live up northwest as well.
It's part of your riding.
Oh, okay.
So you might be representing.
Oh, there we go.
I have also noticed that the diversity, that in terms of could you talk a little bit about?
I think so. Because I've been in that area for so long, I'm glad that you asked this question. I think it's a brilliant question. There has been such a shift in diversity in the area, even when I went to high school. So I'll give you an example. My youngest brother is 10 years younger than me, and he goes to Notre Dame High School still. He's in grade 12. When I went to high school, our graduating class, maybe had 20 or 30 people, maybe 40 people max of color graduating in the graduating class of like 200 plus people. Nowadays, Notre Dame High School is filled with different cultures. So many people from West Africa, East African roots, the Caribbean, the islands, like all these different roots. And I think that that's kind of been a wonderful thing for the entire neighborhood as well. You see it with local businesses as well being attached to a lot of these areas as well. So it's really awesome to see.
Yeah. So speaking of that, how do you, if you get the nomination, with all these cultures and people from different backgrounds, how do you get them to, feel belonging, feel like they belong to your riding and that you can represent them?
Oh, wow. That's a great question too. Yeah. So one of the things that I did in my personal time and volunteering and all that, I actually, with a couple of friends, created or co-founded an organization called the Calgary Ethiopian Youth Alliance. Yeah. And it was particularly based on this question of identity. Yeah. As someone like myself, my parents were Ethiopian refugees. Yeah. They moved to Calgary in 1989. I was born about 6 years later. Yeah. So I grew up in a house where, at home, you have a different culture than you do when you're at school. Yeah. And I noticed that it wasn't just challenging for me, although that is, I would say it was quite challenging for me in my personal life. I found that it was also challenging for a lot of kids. And I didn't have a lot of mentorship in that regard. So our organization wanted to kind of address that issue. And in our community, especially at the time, we were going through a pretty tough time where we lost a few youth in our community that passed away early. So that was kind of the motivation behind what we did. And, that mentorship is so super critical. If I had one family friend who kind of went through something similar because he was about 10 years older than me. Yeah. So, being able to lean on him and talk to him about it was great. But I find that a lot of immigrant children, not just in the African community, but also in the Latin American community, even, from the Middle East, etc. Yeah. They all kind of can feel this kind of identity pull crisis. And that is dangerous because it can lead our kids to kind of get lost or fall down the wrong path, right? So I think that was a great question that you asked. I think that's the way we bring them.
Maybe narrow it down a little bit. We have people, Canada is a melting pot of all cultures, people from different backgrounds. How do you maintain that sense of immigrant, say you're from Ethiopia, you're from Caribbeans or whatever, and still have that sense of belonging, of being a Calgarian and still wanting to be part of the community? You get what I mean?
Yeah. Okay.
Striking that balance of having two cultures coming together, but still having a sense of belonging.
Yeah, well, I think Canada is a beautiful mosaic, right? Like one of the beautiful things about our country is that, we've got so many immigrants that make up who we are, and Canadian identity is built on everybody's identity, right? And I think the key message for us that we've been able to kind of do over the last 7 months of our door knocking and reaching out to community members is, we're having conversations with people from all different backgrounds, but also all different political backgrounds too. And I think that's really important, because if you want to build this sense of community engagement that we talked about like at the beginning, you need to be able to bring people of all walks of life together, right? And what we did actually is we took a different approach to politicking, if you want to call it. What we did is we actually spent the first 3 months just talking to people. We wouldn't even really ask them like, get a membership, do this. We were just having a conversation, like, what's important to you? What issues do you care about? What do you want to see change in the riding? That was the question. And so, people told us about, we need a hospital or health center. We need this K-6 school. It didn't matter where their background was or where they came from. These are like unifying things that, were bipartisan, that had support all across the political aisle. And so, and for people of all walks of life, right? So that's kind of how we shaped our platform. So our platform wasn't even really shaped necessarily from us. It was shaped from like the community and people and the conversations we had, right? So I think that's actually a better way of representing people and bringing them together, like you mentioned.
Because I find that important, because a lot of what we hear now is identity politics. You have to be, people tend to cater to people of a particular group, or and oftentimes the largest group is the one that gets most of the benefit. So how do you balance that with groups that are still coming up, or groups that are still they don't have the numbers, if you get what I mean? That's why I was really trying to get that question out there, but that was a good response.
So again, just talking about immigration and backgrounds and things like that, one would consider politics as an old white man's sport. Put it in short, right? Why do you believe that a young black immigrant would do well in Alberta's politics?
His parents were immigrant.
Your parents are from that background, right? That's what. Why do you believe that you could be successful in this?
Well, I think Alberta, first of all, is a diverse, I said, diverse mosaic. And, as of recently, we know that Calgary is one of the most multicultural cities in all of Canada, right? So I never viewed my involvement in politics from the lens of, a young black man or a young black man of refugees who's running. I viewed it as, I care about my community deeply, and I want to be able to give back to my community. And I think if we come at it from that angle, I think it's you can be far more successful.
That's what I was trying to, because a lot of it, people are coming at it, I'm a woman, or I'm black, or I'm gay, whatever label you want to put it. At the end of the day, when you put label, you are catering to one community and you're excluding another community.
Exactly.
So how do you strike the balance, especially now that politics is basically identity? Everyone is, trying to appeal to a particular group, to black people, to white people, to we can
socioeconomic class, etc.
Like you said, the needs are the same for everyone. It doesn't matter are you black, white.
That's what I was gonna say.
You're
answering the question. If you need a hospital, you need a hospital. If you need a school, you need a school, right? It doesn't matter where you are. And it's fascinating. I want to share this with you. A lot of the support we've gotten to are first-time conservatives who got actually went out of their way, paid the $10 to get an Alberta NDP membership just to support us, because these are needs that, regardless of where their needs, right? Like they need to happen, and we need that advocacy. So it's been a cool experience in that regard, and like you said, like striking that balance is just going towards people's needs, because at the end of the day, every person, what they want to do is be able to put food on the table for their families, have a little money saved up, and maybe go on the odd vacation. That's what people want to do.
That's what people want to do.
And so how we get there is the challenge, obviously, and how we go about creating an equitable society in terms of equitable opportunity to get there. But I think overall, that's kind of the movement that we've done at the grassroots level with our campaign, and that's kind of what we're doing. So,
and you did mention that you've been door knocking. Could you tell me one of the the best experience you had in terms of talking to people? Any conversations that you would remember for a little bit?
Yeah, there's been a few, good and bad, right? Like you get a little bit of everything when you door knock. As anyone knows who's done it in sales in the past, it can be an interesting balance between the two. But no, there's a few good ones. Some of the ones that really stuck out to me were the ones I had with a couple of my old teachers, which is interesting to see them at the doors, because then they were like, "What? You're running?" So that was pretty exciting. And then a few other ones too, like that, where maybe someone you've known in the past, and they're like, "Oh my goodness, this is amazing! I knew you when you were really young." So those are some good ones too, for sure. There's other good ones too, where people kind of tell us how impressed they are with the kind of approach we've taken in all of this. Just kind of, hey, your neighbor said this, in terms of like, they think that the health center is really important, would be important to you. And then they go, "Oh, wow, yeah, you spoke to my neighbor?" Oh, you know what I mean? Like, they were really impressed by that community engagement. We also, like I said, apathy is a huge issue in our area. So we also get a lot, and I would put this in the bad category, actually. It kind of makes me upset. We get people who say, we haven't had someone come to our door at the provincial level ever. Or, or people say, like, it hasn't happened in 10 years, either party, or 5 years, either party, or, And for me personally, I know that because my parents still live in the area. When I asked them, they said it's been like 10 years since someone talked to them as well at the provincial level. So, our goal is to kind of change that throughout. We have other plans too down the road if we win the nomination on how we're going to keep that community engagement going. Because, a lot of the times people are afraid. They say, a politician comes by, you vote for them and then they disappear. Right? You don't see them for another 4 years. One of the ways you could do that is by having town halls, engage, and with technology, especially with the younger campaign like ours, there's so many different ways you can engage people. Like you could have Zoom town halls, which are nice and easy. People don't have to drive. They can be easy. These are all things that our campaign has kind of pitched internally. These are some of the ideas we're kind of looking to ensure that changes as well.
Yeah, so how can people get involved in your campaign?
So there's a number of ways you can get involved. Even if you don't live in the riding, you can still donate to the campaign. You can donate to the Calgary-North website. I can send that link over to you guys, no problem. All those donations help because when and if we do win the nomination, that money goes towards lawn signs and volunteers and all this stuff, right? So it's really important to do that. But the other way you can get involved, and this is probably the most crucial way, with just a week left before the registration deadline, is for people to go get an Alberta NDP membership. We'll put the link there for that as well. It's $10 to get a membership. The membership lapses automatically at the end of the year, but it allows you to vote in our nomination race. So we've got 2 days where you can come out and vote, December 14th and December 17th. The December 14th day is from 6 to 8:30 at the Panorama Hills Community Association. And then the December 17th hours that you can vote are 2 to 5:30 down in Beddington at the Beddington Arts Community, the old Beddington Community Center.
Yeah. So what do I need outside a membership? ID, what else do I bring?
Yeah, so when you go to vote, obviously bring any kind of government issue ID or anything that proves that you live in the riding. Right. So the other thing people don't realize is in these nomination races, 14-year-olds can vote. Anybody 14 and up can come out and vote as well. Also, PRs can vote. So if you live in the riding, you still have a say. And this is one of the fundamental things, when you talk about diversity, this is actually one of the things I bring up all the time, because we hit a door, they say, "Oh, I'm not a Canadian citizen yet, I can't really help you." Yeah. And I'm like, no. First of all, you could vote down the road, which is important. I'm assuming you're planning on getting your citizenship. But second, and most importantly, is you can actually get involved in the political process, even though you're not a citizen yet. And that's one of the ways you can do it, right? This is also true for the UCP as well. This is kind of how it is for both parties. So
noticeably, not a lot of young people are involved in politics. You are young yourself. Can you speak to the lack of involvement of young people and how you seek to encourage them to be part of the process?
I think that's a great question. I think, first of all, young people might seem discouraged by the process. It's not easy doing this. It's time consuming. A lot of young people, especially, are they're trying to work towards their careers. They're in university. They're working maybe 2 or 3 jobs at a time, and so they may feel like politics is just kind of tertiary or secondary by nature. But it's super important. I mean, from policy perspectives that you see right now, the current Alberta government has created a tiered minimum wage system, right? And that affects young people directly. A youth minimum wage of $13 is what we have right now, and that directly affects them. Increasing tuition interest rates, that directly affects them. Getting rid of the student temporary employment program, that directly affects them. And so these are all policies where the absence of young voters really can affect them long term too, right? And I think that one of the reasons why I put my name forward as well, like, this is also part of the thinking, is as a young candidate, there's a lot of work that needs to be done to advocate for youth. And oftentimes they don't really have a voice in the process, right? They're kind of left behind. And there's a lot of other groups too. It's not just youth. We can talk about people who are on the lower end of the socioeconomic spectrum. We can talk about people who may be new migrants, people who go through all sorts of different things, right? But when it comes to youth in particular, there's a need for more advocacy, but it also requires youth to be excited and have someone that they feel represents their needs as well, right? And I think that there's a lack of that to some degree in Alberta, and hopefully I can, help in changing that as well.
Yeah. And how do you intend to go about changing that for them?
Well, I think first of all, I think, like I said, bringing in advocacy, like making sure that there's policies that are friendly to youth, that create that equitable opportunity that we talk about, right? Public education is the great equalizer. It really is. And so making sure that, public education is strong, making sure that hospitals or health centers, our healthcare system is operated correctly. Like, these are ways in which that, they're not direct support, but they indirectly affect so many young people. And, the student temporary employment program, funny enough, is how I got my first ever job in my career path as a policy analyst. It was through that program that now doesn't exist. And it's a great program. I mean, the Lougheed government introduced it, and it employed, 1,000 students every summer. There's no need for us to not have that program. It's not even, it's $40 million in the grand scheme of things. Like, it's really a drop in the bucket for what you get in return, right? You get young people who may not have the networking that some other folks have. When you talk about, as a person of color getting involved in politics, networking is a part of it too, right? As you guys know. So, people who don't have those networks, how can they get the same equitable opportunity? Programs like that are how we can do that. And that helps youth a lot, right? Regardless of where they came from. So,
do you have to engage young people differently than you do older people?
Yeah, I would say so. I think, I see it even in the campaign, like with folks above the age of 40, sort of, they engage more on Facebook. You can even see it in like social media platforms. That's why I'm bringing this up. But younger folks are on Instagram. I don't have TikTok yet. I got to get TikTok, but I don't have TikTok yet. But yeah, they're on TikTok. You see an older crowd a little bit more on Twitter as well, especially in the political engagement side of Twitter. More on the sports side, you'll see younger folks, but with political engagement, you see an older crowd usually as well. So, there's different ways you can address them. I think the same thing though applies. Like there's a unifying message though, regardless of age, class, race, and everything else, right? And that unifying message is, how do we create a society that maintains upward socioeconomic mobility for those who are working towards that, right? That's the unifying message.
Thank you for coming here, Moses. We had a very great conversation, very fruitful. For our guests, if you would like to support Moses in his nomination campaign, please go to the link that we're going to post here and donate to his cause. And we hope you enjoy this message. This is the Idle Park Talk Show, and we were joined by
Moses Mariam.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.